My name is Clarence Stricker. I wasn't in the bomb group, but I was in the war. My brother Robert Stricker was a bombardier, and his plane was shot down over Vienna, Austria. And Bob landed on the ground safely after parachuting out of the plane. But he was captured by the German army, I guess, or Air Force people. And for some reason they decided to kill him. And they took out of the 10 on the plane, I think 6 were killed, and 2 of them, one of them was my brother Bob. I'd just like to add how I found out about it. I served in the Pacific. I was at an island in New Guinea, and we were near a water, big, pardon me, and here an officer in a motorboat landed at our dock, and he asked about me, and of course I was concerned what he wanted to know or wanted me for. And after he introduced himself, and then he told me that he had bad news that my brother Bob was killed on February the 13th or 14th, and that they wanted me to know about it as soon as possible, which I appreciate that, but it was mighty hard to get that kind of news. Bob was only 20 years old.
Clarence, do you remember what date that was, how long it was?
February 13th.
No, the date you were notified.
Oh, it was in June, I know.
June?
Yeah.
Wow, you didn't know until June?
I'm pretty sure it was June. And, well, I'm not real sure. Let's see. February 13th. It could have been April.
Okay.
And, of course, the news is bad no matter when you receive it.
Sure.
And, but Bob was proud to be in the Air Force. I mean, after, it's funny, we left Newport, Kentucky the same day, he going into the Air Force and I went into the Army Engineers, and we didn't see each other again. And we left, I guess about January or December, right around Christmas.
Was it 43?
Yeah.
1943?
1943. We left Newport, and we left the same day. It was surprising that, you know, we had went in at different times in the service, but we left the Newport, Kentucky on the same day in January. So it's a tough tragedy. Anybody that's gone through something like that realized just how tough it was. Is there anything else I can add?
I wanted to ask your brother, do you remember anything about the notification that your family received at home?
Yeah, I do. My name is Jerry Stricker. I'm the youngest in our family, and Clarence over here is the oldest. And I do remember the two things. The officer of the Army knocking on our door and notifying my mother that our brother, her son, was missing in action. And it was, I guess, a telegram was also received. I don't know which came first. I think the telegram came after they knocked on the door and told us. And it was quite a shock for the family. I was only 8 years old, and my sadness was really from my mother crying and not having the relationship with Bob as like my brother Clarence did. They grew up together and played together and went to school together and stuff like that. And I was, I guess, about 6 years old when they left to go into the Army, and I experienced. My experiences were an 8-year-old, 7-year-old going through war, not knowing who was going to win the war, and that's what we talked about as kids. And my brother, he was very bright. He wanted to be a pilot, and I guess so many people want to be a pilot. He was concerned about flunking out, and once you flunk out, you don't get to fly. So he decided that he wanted to fly a bit more than he wanted to be a pilot, so he volunteered to be a bombardier, and that's what he did. And he was on his 39th mission when he was hit, and I guess they landed in a little town called Houston, Austria. It's sort of a suburb of Vienna, Austria. And he was, as Clarence said, he was captured, and apparently, from whatever we were able to learn through court trials and things like that, that they were captured, and the Gestapo's ordered them to be murdered, and they had their flunkies walk the two at a time, I guess, down this road and act like they were escaping, and then shoot them. And they, according to the transcript of the trial, they took a ring off one of the deceased officers and a watch, and we never did get the ring back, so we're guessing that's what happened to the ring. The other two were shot, I guess, subsequent to that, and I guess around 2 or 3 years after 1 year he was declared dead, as it was a procedure, and maybe a year or two after that his remains were found. He was in a grave of another member of the crew that was shot with him, probably the navigator. And it was just a very hard, sad time. My mother was a Gold Star mother, and had a star in the window of our house. Of course, what I remember is the air raids that we had during that time. So they had air raids, and we had to close the shutters and the blinds, and the sirens would go off, and of course was a double whammy for us, that we didn't know we were going to win or lose, and then having two brothers in the service, it was quite a time. And in the middle of the war, we rented our home, and the person decided to sell it, and so we were basically homeless, and we had to move to Effingham, Illinois for 90 days while we were in the middle of the war. And Bob came home on a furlough, and he was visited us in Effingham, Illinois, and that was the last time I got to see him alive.
Jerry, can you give a synopsis of that letter that your mother received from the co-pilot's wife?
Yeah, give her some of it?
Yes.
Yes. My mother received a letter from the mother of the co-pilot, and he got out of service, or got out of prison. I think it was sometime in June, and she wrote that letter. I think it was in June, as I recall, and just talked about the fact that there was 10 parachutes, and he went down, and another officer was with him, and the two of them together were, one of them had a gun, and a bunch of civilians, Austrian civilians, came up, and they asked him to help them. They refused after having a little meeting because they figured they'd get killed and shot, and whole villages would get killed. So the co-pilot had a gun, and they wanted it, but he refused to give it to him. He'd give it to them, and when the German army came up, he'd give them to the army. And he went on, and they came and arrested him, and he went on to prison and so forth. But it was, and the other interesting thing is about my brother in the last mission. It was his 39th mission. His normal pilot couldn't fly that day, and a fellow by the name of Phil Whitman, the first lieutenant, it was his 50th mission, and he flew on that. And he was, I talked to him the other day for 51 minutes over the phone, and he was telling me all his story. And he said that he was blown out of the ship and parachuted down and landed in 2 feet of snow with no shoes on, and I guess his shoes that he were not fastened tight, and when he got on out in the side in the air going down the parachute, that he lost his shoes. And a couple, I believe it was Frenchmen, helped him, got him some shoes, even though they're a little too small. He at least got some shoes. They gave him a cigarette, and he eventually was captured, and did hook up with some of the other men on the crew, and also his original plane was also shot down, and he saw some of his former crew in jail too.
Very good. I want to thank you,
You're welcome.
gentlemen, for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome.